Hello and welcome. Let's settle in for a quiet moment together. I'd like to share a story with you, one that comes from traditional Chinese literature. It's a simple tale, really, about a woodcutter, an ancient game, and the mysterious nature of time itself. So, before we really dive into the world of this story, let's start with its name. So often the title itself holds the key. And if we can understand its characters, we can unlock the meaning that's woven all through the tale. The story is called Wang Zhi Lan Ke, and it comes from a collection known as the Shuyiji. Let's take a look at that title piece by piece just to see what it can tell us. Okay, so the first two characters you see there, that's Wang Zhi. This is the name of our main character, the man whose pretty simple life is about to take a very strange turn. He's a woodcutter, just an ordinary man. Next up, we have the character Lan. Now, this is a really powerful word. It means to rot, to decay, to soften and just fall apart. It really carries this image of something solid being completely undone by the slow, invisible work of time. And that final character you see is Ke. This refers to something very specific, the wooden handle of an axe. The very tool that Wang Zhi would hold in his hands every single day. So when you put it all together, Wang Zhi Lan Ke, it literally means Wang Zhi's rotten axe handle. And where does this story come from? Well, it's found in the Shuyiji, which translates to something like records of strange matters. It's this wonderful collection of legends and tales of wonder from the Southern Dynasties period. So we're talking about a period in Chinese history from more than 1,500 years ago. All right, now that we have the meaning of the name kind of settled in our minds, the story itself can begin. I want you to picture the Jin Dynasty, a time long, long past, and a quiet mountain range just thick with ancient forests. This is where our woodcutter Wang Zhi lived. One morning, just as he had on countless mornings before, he took up his axe and walked deep into the woods of the Shishi Mountains, which means the Stone Chamber Mountains, to go look for firewood. He ventured a bit further than he usually did on this day, hoping to find some really good, strong timber. And deep, deep within the forest, he came across a hidden clearing that he'd never seen before in his life. And there, sitting in the dappled sunlight, were several children. Their faces were just so peaceful, and they seemed almost ageless. Now, what Wang Zhi found in that clearing, well, it was much more than just a game. It was like a moment suspended in time, a scene that felt like it existed in a world completely separate from his own. He saw that the children were all gathered around this large, flat stone, and their attention was completely fixed on a game of Go. The only sound you could hear was the quiet, deliberate click of the black and white stones on the board. He was so intrigued. He just leaned his axe against a nearby tree and settled down to watch, making sure not to disturb their incredible concentration. And as he was watching, one of the children just glanced up, didn't say a word, but offered him this small object that looked sort of like the pit of a date, a jujube. Wang Zhi took it and he placed it in his mouth. And just like that, any feeling of hunger, any feeling of thirst, it was just gone, completely disappeared. He completely forgot about gathering wood. He forgot all about the long walk home. He was just utterly absorbed by the silent, strategic beauty of this game. It was as if the sun itself just hung still in the sky, and that one afternoon stretched on and on into a sort of calm eternity. But of course, all moments must end, even the ones that feel timeless. And as the game finally came to a close, Wang Zhi's entire understanding of the world was about to unravel. Finally, the game reached its end, and one of the children turned to look at Wang Zhi. His voice was as quiet as the forest. "You have been watching for a very long time," he said very gently. "It's time for you to go home now." Stirred from his trance, Wang Zhi stood up and reached for his axe. But the moment his hand touched the handle, it just disintegrated into dust. The wood had completely rotted away. Even the iron axe head was pitted with rust. He was so confused. He turned to leave, but the path he'd followed to get there, it was overgrown, totally unrecognizable. When he finally, somehow, navigated his way back to where his village should have been, Everything had changed. The buildings were different, the streets were laid out in a new way, and he didn't recognize a single soul. He started asking after his family, but the villagers he spoke to just shook their heads. They told him those names belonged to people from their great-grandparents' generation. And that's when it hit him. The devastating truth just washed over him. That single, peaceful afternoon he'd spent watching a game in the mountains had been, for the rest of the world, 100 years. But the story of Wang Zhi didn't just fade away with his own memory. No. Instead, it became a part of the language, a part of the culture for centuries to come. It became this powerful shorthand for time and for transformation.
So the phrase Lan Ke, which means the rotten axe handle, it actually grew into an idiom. On one hand, it's used to describe that shocking, disorienting feeling when you realize just how much the world has moved on without you. But it also has this second, really beautiful meaning. It signifies that state of total absorption in an art or a passion, that feeling where all awareness of time just dissolves.
In fact, the connection was so profound that the game of Go itself earns a new poetic name. Even today, the game of Go is sometimes called Lan Ke, the game of the rotten axe handle. You can see how this story just echoed through the ages. The great Tang Dynasty poet Meng Jiao captured its spirit so perfectly in a line inspired by this very legend. He wrote, "One day among immortals, 1,000 years in the world of men." And so the tale of Wang Zhi leaves us with a quiet question. Have you ever been so lost in something, maybe a piece of music, a good book, or just a deep conversation, that when you finally look up, you're startled by how much time has passed? You know, perhaps in those moments, we each feel just a small echo of what that woodcutter must have felt during that timeless afternoon up in the mountains.